Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Starting now. Hello. This is our third episode of the Go There Do That podcast. My name is Ethan, and joined with me today is, of course, Heather.
Hello.
And all of our animals. We have O'Malley next to Heather. We have actually Cece behind me just sleeping, and Smoosh is wandering around somewhere trying to find the right time to unplug everything, as always. And we are going to talk about Alaska. And we want to break this up into multiple parts. Not sure how many yet, but this is definitely part one. And this is sort of our first big adventure together, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so we really found ourselves using our vacation days and holidays mostly visiting families, or our families, right, in West Texas. And then what kind of got us into the vibe of Alaska the first time back in 2019, Heather?
Well, yeah, we kind of started considering like going. I mean, it was kind of like the first time in our lives where we both were full grown-ups, right? So we both had full, like stable full-time jobs. It was like the first year post us being married, post us both having full time jobs. And so we kind of found ourselves in a position where we were like, oh, we have like grown up money. Like we could actually go on a vacation like people do, you know? So we started thinking about what to do with that time and like where to go.
Yeah, and this is before Go There Do That was even a
Yeah.
thought in our minds. I still did photography, of course, and on this first trip, I didn't do any video stuff either. It was just like a casual, laid back, just we'll take a camera and one memory card,
Yeah.
and then just kind of see if we can retain some of these memories.
I barely remember what that's like.
Yeah. And so as we were planning for the cruise, I just want to brag on Heather's planning skills because I did just look back through the documents online that she has still saved, and it was a complete breakdown of multiple different cruise lines. We went with Norwegian on this one, but there was I think 3 different cruise lines that you had looked at and compared multiple different
Price
itineraries.
points. I like found what their ship amenities were, like where they would port, and like broke it down basically so that we could get like the most bang for our buck. So it wasn't necessarily about finding the cheapest cruise, but it was about finding one where I felt like we were gonna get as much time in Alaska and like actually porting and not just at sea, for the amount of days that we had for vacation, and then comparing that like with how expensive each one was, which cruises are not bad. Yeah.
Cruises are not bad for your first, I guess, bigger adventure. You haven't even been on a plane at this point in your life, right? Your first time on
No,
a
that was
plane.
my first time on a
Yeah, it
plane.
was
Yeah.
to Anchorage. And so we did fly into Anchorage, and we had like a day or so there, I think. A couple of days maybe. And we saw a couple of things in Anchorage. I guess we can, now that we're,
We'll go more into detail about that. But like
yeah.
as far as like how we decided on Alaska, I think it'd be like good to talk about that. Cuz now at this point we've been to Alaska like 3 separate times. So obviously it's kind of an important place to us, and it just like holds a very special, you know, place, at least for me for sure, but I'm pretty sure for you also. But the way we kind of came across that is first, like we decided we're going to do something like let's go on a vacation. And then started thinking about like what does that look like. So first I started to plan like a New England type of trip, kind of modeled after like your aunt and uncle and their daughter had gone on a trip up to New England, and the pictures were just like beautiful because they went in the fall, lots of fall colors. And so I started to kind of model it after that without knowing too many details about their trip, but it got overwhelming like really fast because it was also our first trip ever. Like we'd never done anything like that.
This was a lot of rental car stuff.
Yeah, rental cars, like hotels, figuring out like locations where we're even going to go, like point A to point B, like what do you do? And then I can't remember who, somebody like brought up Alaska.
I believe it was Jeffrey, a friend of mine, because he had been to Alaska for a previous like military trip exercise. He signed up for survivalist training in Fairbanks or something.
And he still had something positive to say about Alaska.
Yeah, after surviving a terrible cold, like negative 20 degrees or something, he had to sleep out there. So, yeah, he said it was worth going to, though. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of where the suggestion came from, I think.
Yeah.
I'll just give him credit.
Okay, we can do that. I mean, I've always been curious about Alaska. Like growing up, I knew people that like visited Alaska, and so it was always something that I just like dreamed about, but never really even could see myself doing that. But as soon as he said that, I was like, you know what? Like we're about to take a trip and like do something, so yeah, why not Alaska? And then I started looking into like the easiest ways to because Alaska is like not an easy place to visit, really. And so I started looking up the easiest ways to like see Alaska, and that happened to be via a cruise, which I think is like how a lot of people that do visit Alaska see Alaska.
Yeah, it was good.
Because it was like way 1,000 times less overwhelming than figuring out everything like on the New England trip, because it was like basically you figure out how to get there, and then the cruise ship basically takes care of the rest. So it's not too much planning that goes into it. It was like probably the perfect first trip that we could have taken to kind of ease into the way that I plan things now.
Yeah, and my impressions of Alaska, just growing up, I had a history teacher in high school who had lived there forever, and so whenever it would snow in Texas, she was never excited about it because living in Alaska, your freezer, you could just throw stuff outside.
Yeah.
And it was cold all the time, but yeah, I was like, what would it be like to be in a place where it's snowing like most of the time? Like,
Yeah.
it was pretty incredible to feel. I like that amount of cold. I guess I like that you can put more layers on for the cold instead of like when it's really hot, you're just kind of in trouble.
Stuck, yeah.
In Texas. So it is refreshing to go to a totally different climate.
Yeah.
That's one of the many things I like about Alaska for me, I guess.
Yeah.
Makes it special. It has its own, yeah.
And plus, we were planning the trip for summer because at the time I was teaching. So, like, every event is kind of based around that schedule. And so that's when we were going to go, which is also, like, probably the best time to visit Alaska is during the summer. Because it is not like how you usually think of Alaska, where it's freezing. Like, the weather's pretty mild.
Yes, but we did pack for extreme cold weather. And then there were people wearing shorts when we had first gotten on the
Well,
cruise
I
ship.
read a bunch of like blogs and stuff about it, and it was like just make sure you have a variety, because on the ship it could be like 30, 40 degrees, and then you could port and it's like 70 degrees. So basically it was like bring everything. And that's what I did.
Yeah. So, where to next? Are we going the flight into Anchorage? And we're going to talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
So, some of the things we did in Anchorage. First of all, Anchorage is like, I think it's most of Alaska's population is in Anchorage, and it's like the biggest city there
Alaska,
in
yeah.
Alaska, yeah. And so it says it's a normal
Place to fly into.
regular city, yeah. And all the anemones are there, I guess, is what you would imagine. So that was a good first impression into a city in Alaska too, because there are other, like Fairbanks is a little more like
Sparse.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. And so Anchorage was really cool. They had a Kincaid Park.
Yeah, we went
went
to
to.
a couple of like places to eat and places to see in Anchorage, because one of my students at the
Yes.
time, their parent, they had lived in Anchorage before that, so I knew to hit up Moose's Tooth, which we've been there again since then, because it had amazing pizza. Like I still think about that pizza. It's probably my favorite pizza that I've had so far, besides maybe the one in Paris. But and then we went to Humpy's.
Humpies.
Yeah, because it was supposed to be really great seafood. And then Kincaid Park was another place that we went to, because we didn't have a lot of time in Anchorage. I think we were there for like a 24-hour block of time before we left.
Yeah, and Kincaid Park, actually, when we were just walking around, that's where we saw two moose, and those animals are ginormous. The first one was a female. She was just kind of laying there, and then we turned a corner, and it was like a juvenile male. He had little horns like sprouting out. But they are very large animals, and
Yeah, intimidating.
the locals just looked at it and kept walking, and so we did the same, because like Heather only gives me a certain amount of time for wild animal photos, and it was very limited.
Yeah.
But they're pretty incredible, but
They-
they are very dangerous.
Yeah, there's a delicate balance between being like, yes, do your thing, get that photo, and being like, don't be one of those people gets yourself killed.
And so before I could get trampled by a moose, we did have to leave Anchorage, and that was by train. And so that was from Anchorage to Seward. And in that summer of 2019, there were some wildfires
Oh yeah.
nearby in Anchorage. So in some of the photos I got, that you can see, like the beginning, there was a bit of a haze throughout. But once we got through that, it just opened up, and it was just the Alaskan wilderness. And this route you could only see by train, I believe. Like it was parallel to a road for a while until
Yeah.
it just split off, and then you're like going over rivers and through mountains, and yeah, only
It's
railroad.
like the best way to see that stretch, because because those roads are kind of like dangerous too, because they're like windy. There's not a whole, like, you really shouldn't be like stopping and looking and taking in the views, but like it was really nice via train, because you can just kind of take it all in. You're not going super fast either, so yeah.
And we had a onboard MC.
Oh yeah, what was it? Celeste?
Celeste was her name. Yes, she had narrated the ride, the journey, and she had pointed things out along the way, and that was really cool too, because we had she was also the bartender,
Yeah.
and so we could, as she was announcing things, she was making drinks, but it made it even more pleasant on the way there to Seward.
She had good energy.
And from Seward, we didn't really do anything
We
there.
literally did nothing.
Yeah,
we got off the
just
train and went to the boat.
went straight to the boat, and so that was the Norwegian Jewel is the boat's name, the cruise ship. But yeah, cruise ship is interesting because it's like a little city in
Yeah.
the water. Like first time getting on, you're just kind of overwhelmed because it has like its own giant lobby and different floors, and the rooms are of course very tiny, but you're not really paying for that.
Well, we also paid for a tiny room.
We did pay for a tiny room. Something that people recommended was to pay for a balcony.
Yeah. Like
On a
the
cruise?
Alaska cruise is a good one to splurge for the balcony on. That is one thing that I wish that we would have done.
Because on the cruise we did find ourselves just on top of the deck. The most of the time just staring out, and it's just 360 views of, your of Alaskan mountains. So that was really cool to see. But yeah, if we did have just a constant view outside, and you could just walk out and just see it from your wherever your room is, that would be cool too. But
Well, and especially like the first day, we didn't port anywhere, but we made it to, I think it's like, no, I don't think it's Mendenhall Glacier, but we like went to a glacier first, like on the very first day, and it's not like we're stopping or anything. It's just that we kind of came near it and got to see it, and you're like out on the deck with everyone else, so that was kind of, I would have preferred seeing that from the peacefulness of my balcony.
right, because they do
Personally.
at least the Norwegian Jewel, they do drive up to the glacier and then just spin the whole ship around.
360, yeah.
So wherever you're standing, you'll see what's going on, and it was calving a lot.
Yeah, that
when we
was
saw it.
pretty incredible. Like, even though it was like kind of overwhelming because it was really crowded, but it didn't take away from like seeing a glacier for the first time.
Yes, because this is when you do need to wear your winter clothes, because when you get close to a glacier, it's like all the weather changes, and you start to see the little bits and pieces of it. There were some seals just parked on top of the bits of the glacier as we drove up, sailed towards the glacier. But yeah, that the presence is known before you even get there. It's like it's not just seeing it; it's like feeling the wind, get a lot colder, and then everybody starts saying, "Oh, there's a piece of the glacier."
It's an immersive
floating.
experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was fun. And so then we made our way to our first stop, which was Icy Strait / Huna. And so we were a little thrown off by the way Icy Strait is, because it was sort of
It was like a tour. It felt very touristy.
quite literally a
there.
tourist trap, I think,
Yeah.
because it had a lot of the gift shops and the bands. And
I really think that
yeah.
they like built Icy Strait to accommodate cruise ships. Like, I think that was like the point of kind of like how they built that up. So because of that, it felt very like just like a touristy.
kind of a mini Disneyland type-ish
Yeah.
vibe, without the Mickey Mouse. But
Yeah.
and the cruise ship there wasn't like a dock or anything, a port to pull up to. We got on these little boats.
I think that one was a dock. I think the boats were to Juneau.
Juneau.
Yeah.
Okay. So save that for later. But yeah. Because they did build the entire thing for the
you to
cruise
port,
ships.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
But then we walked like a mile or so to Huna, which
Huna.
is like a little village right next to it. And then I felt better.
right. And that was very interesting because on the way there, each bench had its own like unique art style on it, I guess. And it was like totems, like a totem pole type of art on them.
It might have been like
leading up
native.
to it. And then there was a local chasing away a dog from her chickens. Yeah, because the dog was trying to eat him, and that was interesting to see. And she was very friendly. And we ate at a place called the Fisherman's Daughter.
Oh yeah.
And that's where I had salmon there. It was it was the best salmon I've ever had. And I imagine it was caught, right down the way.
It was like a small local place. I mean, if you like seafood, then basically that's like I kind of committed to eating seafood for like every meal besides like breakfast.
Very good.
Because you're in Alaska, so.
Yeah. So we didn't know what else to do, but we were there for,
that one was the
time.
longest port. So I think that one was like a 9-hour port. So you have 9 hours to do stuff. But I hadn't signed up for any excursions because we were like trying to make it as like inexpensive as possible. So I didn't sign up for any excursions there because I was like, well, I don't want to pay for that. But that would have been the best place to have signed up for an excursion because like there's only so many places that you can go and like make it back to the cruise ship. And then a lot of the like the place we kind of like wandered off to kind of felt like we weren't supposed to be wandering off to it. Like there was like no one else over there, so it's kind of like scary because you're in the Alaskan like wilderness and like we'd never been anywhere like that, so it was kind of like eerie.
So basically, when you get off the boat, you're supposed to go right towards Huna. You're in Icy Strait. You turn right, go to Huna. Well, we walked all the way back to Icy Strait and then went left along the beach, which there was no like development or anything really that we
It's
could
beautiful
see. Yeah, and
forest.
so we heard, we got away from all the people, and that's really when we started to like.
Oh, and there's that abandoned, like it looked like a tour bus type thing, but like with the top gone. And it was just like abandoned there, like had been there forever.
Yeah, it was interesting. Don't know what to think of that, but
We like walked a little bit into the forest,
Oh, right.
and then I don't know, we didn't get super far in, and I was just like,
It's overwhelming.
I want to turn around.
Yeah, because then
Well, and we could have gotten lost too,
Yeah.
because it wasn't like a trail. It was just like, hey, what's up here?
Because the rule for cruise ships is you need to be back in time, or else you, right?
Or else.
You're gonna stay there. Like,
Yeah.
they can't. They do like head counts and stuff. They give you a little card, I think, to like
Yeah.
check in. But yeah, if you're not back in time, they kind of aren't gonna wait on you.
But for that one, I was like, oh, we should have signed up for an excursion. Because it was just a lot of time too. And there wasn't a whole lot of like places for us to explore. That was one thing about the cruise. And that's kind of like why we decided to go back later, is because you didn't have time to really like dig into experiences or like hikes. And so I think at that one, like we could have like done a helicopter glacier tour. There's like dog sledding, like all these different things, zip lining.
Zip lining. There was like the longest zip line in Alaska.
There was a lot of things that if I were to do it again, I would have splurged on an excursion in Icy Strait. And then you would still have time to visit Huna and like see and like wander along the beach and stuff, because it was just like a lot of time to be there with like not a ton of things to do.
Yeah. But it was still fun.
Yes.
And after that, we went to Juneau, Alaska's capital, which is actually only accessible by boat or plane. You can't drive a car into Juneau. But that's where we actually had an excursion.
Yeah, but I went and signed up for one right after, because I was like, well, let's do something.
And that one was whale watching. But that excursion kind of took up the whole time.
That was the only thing we had time for in Juneau, yeah.
But we did see whales, and that was really cool. And it's like all these other boats just, because there's a rule where they can't get closer than 50 meters or something to a whale, so they have to kind of wait for them to breach. But then they go so deep underwater, you don't know.
They could come back up miles away.
Yeah, so they can hold their breath a long time. And it's like all these other tourist boats floating around.
It was like a competition to see who
they're waiting. But yeah, that was pretty amazing to see all the little, and the seals on the buoys.
And we saw a mother and a calf.
Yes.
Yeah. Like it was far away, but like you could still tell what was happening. But yeah, you saw like the mom come up, and then a little
baby fin pop up afterwards.
Yeah, that was really cool.
And so the pattern for humpback whales is that in the summertime they hang out in Alaska, but in the wintertime they actually migrate to like the Hawaii area, and that's where they go to mate. I'm fairly sure because my friend actually just went to Hawaii and he saw a bunch of whales. Like,
Oh, cool.
yeah, so they like migrate down there and then they come back up. So, yeah, that was a pretty cool thing to see. Whales just
And
jumping.
Rochelle and Larry were on that
Our
excursion.
friends.
So there's this older couple from New York that we had met actually like at the hotel in Anchorage.
In Anchorage, yes.
When we were riding the shuttle to the train. But they're just like really funny, like dry sense of humor, just like very blunt.
Yes.
Like New York people, I guess. But they were on the whale watching tour, and so that was a lot of fun because we like hung out with them and
Yes.
bonded with them.
Yeah, and we actually got to a part of the whale watching tour. They checked these little sea critter traps or something, and they pulled up some starfish, and you got to hold a starfish in your hand, and that was interesting. They're kind of icky.
They're kind of icky, but it was still cool.
Yeah. So after that, we went to Skagway, which we did on a hiking excursion.
Level 3 hike.
It was a level 3 hike. That's, I think, the highest it went.
Yeah.
Right? And so we're like, okay, we're going to like scale a mountain or something. But,
well, because we were, that summer, like we were like in shape. Like
Right.
I was in the best shape of my life that summer. And so we were like, we can handle like whatever hike there is. And like, because we kind of had tried to wander off in Icy Strait and like hike, but I felt a lot more comfortable going on a hike with someone. So we were like, let's do an excursion hike.
yes, because a guide would be
Yeah.
less likely to, well, you don't really know what to do. I mean, we saw moose and everything in Anchorage, but, I don't want to run into a bear or another moose and not know what to do without a expert there, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm there to take photos and I just want to have a good time, but I don't want to run into something dangerous, especially for our first naive visit to a place,
Yeah.
But the level 3 hike was, we felt, maybe a bit of an exaggeration.
Yes.
Because it was very flat and calm,
Yeah.
and there wasn't really much elevation gain anywhere. It was just
No.
sort of a walking path that
Yeah, it was
you see.
pretty calm.
But it was really amazing, though.
Yeah.
We learned about the plant Devil's Club.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very spiky, leafy,
I had seen it everywhere
Yeah.
before that. Yeah.
dangerous plant, but it's local to Alaska. But it's very scary looking. That's why they call it Devil's Club.
And we got to walk along like a river. It was like a nice hike.
Very pleasant.
But yeah, I was like ready to scale a mountain or whatever. But so if you're thinking about the hikes on, like if you're going on a cruise and kind of looking at the levels, a level 3 hike is probably like maybe intermediate, not hard. Yeah. And then below that would be like easy.
Like a level 1 hike would be just like an escalator ride or something.
Yeah.
I don't know what level 1 would be, but
Yeah.
but different abilities for everyone.
Yeah. But we had time for, I think
We ate there, and it was called the Red Onion,
Oh, yeah.
which was actually used to be a brothel back in the day, and the waitresses sort of played the part
Still, yeah.
as the
Yeah.
the ladies that worked there, but they would just make jokes and like
Yeah,
they
and then
dressed
they were
different.
dressed. Yeah. Yeah.
But that was very good. Eating there too. That was fun.
And we got to ride, there was like a train that we rode to like the hiking spot, and we rode that there and back. And then on the way back, we had to get like I guess we crossed the Canadian border to get there. And when we were coming back, we had to get checked on the train.
Yes, Skagway is very close to Canada, and so
Yeah.
the border patrol agent jumped on and had to check all the passports just to be sure no Canadians were trying to sneak in, I guess. But yeah, that was interesting to see. And actually, a local shop in Skagway, I took a photo of it. There was one of them was closed. They said it was way too hot it was like
There was a couple of places
Yeah.
closed, but that one had a sign, yeah.
but it was under 80 degrees.
I think it was like 74.
Yeah, they said it's too hot to be open. We're going down to the river. See you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, they left a note on their door. The local shop was closed because it
But
was
to
too
be
hot.
fair, there's not a whole lot of like air conditioning because it doesn't typically get very hot there. And
That's
so,
very true.
like, I think the hotel that we stayed at in Anchorage didn't have air conditioning just because they don't need it. So then when it's hot, it like feels hot. No reprieve.
Yeah, and then once you get back on the cruise ship, they toot the horn. That's incredibly loud, and then they leave. So yeah, that was a little bit of Skagway. Next was Ketchikan. Do you remember Ketchikan? It was. They said it's unusual for it to not be raining
Yeah.
in Ketchikan, Alaska.
Yeah.
And I remember there's a lot of fishing boats just entering and exiting there. And we had walked. There's like a lumberjack show that they do there.
Oh,
we,
yeah.
We didn't see
In
it,
like the
but
touristy area.
but it's like in
yeah.
a touristy area, and there's just like people who they just cut trees and stuff, and it's like a show they put together. But this one we didn't have an excursion for
No.
either. But there is a mountain.
Yeah, we wandered off to go on a hike.
Yes.
But it was like a trail.
And that was really cool because we went up into the clouds in this mountain, and we just started getting. It's very humid, but we just started getting wet just from walking through a cloud.
Right.
My hair was just so.
And you could like see it around, like it was all like foggy around you.
It was very, very spooky. But that was a very
That was probably my favorite
yeah.
place that we like stopped at on the cruise.
Yeah, because it was way up there, and it had its own unique flavor
Yeah.
out of all the visits, I guess.
Yeah. And it was like the hike, I still to this day am like sad. Like we were like going to try to make it to the top, but we just didn't have enough time like to get back and eat and make it back to the cruise ship. That was like one thing is like you're very limited on like your time, so you kind of have to be like go. Maybe if we had like hitched a ride to the mountain, but we like walked like 2 miles it through the city to get to the trail, and then we had to make it back and everything. So
if you're not catching the theme here, it is that
it's you get to see so much on a cruise, but it's just so like whiplash. So it really depends on like what you're looking for. I think like if like it pros is was it was so easy to plan. You got to see a little bit of everything, and like all your meals are like kind of included. Like it just takes a lot of like the scariness, I guess, of like planning a trip. But the downfall of that is that we were like craving to see more and like have time to like do more and experience more in Alaska. So I'm glad that it wasn't our only shot.
right. What could have been.
Yeah.
If we didn't make the effort to go back, but
Yeah.
it's the cruise was a good introduction to it. We could just kind of get our feet, dip our toes in the water, you know, because you are only seeing. I mean, Alaska being a gigantic landmass on a cruise, you're only gonna see the coastal side of things, and you do get to see glaciers and.
It gives you like enough of a taste of Alaska where if it's like it's amazing to see if it's the only time you're ever going to see it, and then if it's not, it's going to make you want to go back.
Yes, because we heard about a lot of other things to do inside of Alaska, but you're not able to do that.
Yeah.
But this is why it's a multi-parter.
Right, because we couldn't help but go back.
Yes, but overall.
Yeah. And then we ended in Vancouver, but that was like like you get off the ship and you're like done.
Yes.
And then we had a plane ride to catch. So we've technically been to Canada, but we couldn't check our checked bags until like 3 hours before our flight.
Mm-hmm.
And so we didn't get to like explore basically at all, except for the airport.
Mm-hmm.
And so
We had like a shuttle from the cruise line to the airport, or the cruise ship to the
Yeah.
airport. So we got to just basically
see a
go
little
through
bit, yeah, but
Vancouver. But
not
yeah,
experience that at all.
I did see the Canadian flag. So.
I think, yeah, we were in Canada. We were in Canada on Canada Day.
Oh yeah.
Remember? Yeah.
That was weird. Mm-hmm. But we were.
But we basically did not
Just there
get
in the
to
airport.
see Canada at
Mm-hmm.
all. So we should talk about like the actual cruise, like the boat,
Mm-hmm.
like what it's like on the boat.
Oh right, we're talking filling up all this time with Alaska.
Alaska.
But so yeah, what is there to do on a cruise ship? On the Norwegian, and there's other cruise
Yeah.
lines that have different amenities and like roller coasters or whatever. But the Norwegian Jewel had it like a pool and hot tubs,
yeah.
and they had there was a comedian that we saw
Oh yeah, on the last night.
on the
yeah.
last night, and that was very fun. And then we saw our friends Rochelle and Larry, and
Yeah.
we ended up sitting next to them. We just kept running into them at
Yeah.
every.
Like it was
time.
never on purpose,
Mhm.
but we were just like, we're best friends.
But yeah, and there's like those glamour shots that you can take on a cruise ship.
Oh
that
yeah, we didn't do this.
We didn't do, but we walked past it several times. And you get used to the constant rocking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
eventually.
really didn't get. I was nervous that I was gonna get seasick and like brought a bunch of Dramamine, but I didn't.
Dramamine for seasickness or even planes, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
get you acclimated, I guess, better. So
The food, like there's a couple of like restaurants.
yeah.
Some of them are like kind of buffet style,
Mm-hmm.
which we usually did that for like breakfast because you could just like get wherever you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but there's like we were on the ship for like a week, and then there's like 5 restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's like by the end of it, you're like sick of those 5 restaurants, and like, you know.
Yeah,
but
and the buffet is just infinite food, and you just have nothing to do but
one of
eat.
my favorite things to do on the ship, though, was like also it's summer in Alaska, so the sun goes down at like 2 a.m. And so even after like you've been ported all day and you've experienced, you know, this place in Alaska, you get back on the ship, you still have like 6-7 hours of daylight left.
Mm-hmm.
And so my favorite part of the ship was like in the evenings getting like a little glass of tea, like hot tea and like honey, and just like sitting out on the deck and just like watching everything.
Feeling the breeze, because we actually one night, I'm not sure which, but we did see a whale
Yeah, it was the same night that we saw
in
the
Juneau.
whales in Juneau.
Oh right, yes, yeah. And we just saw a mother and a baby, and we were the only 2 up there.
Yeah.
But it was just we just
It was right next to the ship. Like we saw it closer than when we saw them when we were whale watching.
yes, that's true.
Yeah.
But they were just coming above the water, just together, just swimming away, and it was really cool to see.
Yeah. So so that is one thing that if you don't have the balcony and you leave the ship and you like hang out outside of your room and like the restaurants and like the community spaces within the ship and you're outside, like you do have chances of like seeing some really cool stuff.
Because Alaska is very wild, and it has a lot of animals, and you can always see something crazy go
Yeah.
on, it seems. There's always going to be a little fishing boat doing something, and like you just go past some mountains, like
Yeah.
it's just constant. But then there's like the days at sea were probably the most boring.
Yeah, the only thing to do is like drink and
Drink
swim.
wine and swim and eat, yeah.
But the one I chose, I did choose like in my little spreadsheet. That was one of the things that like made this a little bit better of an option because there was only 2 days that were like at sea. So being at sea means that like you don't port it all that day. You're just on the boat all day. And so this particular cruise only had 2 of those days. There were some others that had more just because it takes so long to get somewhere. But
A lot of coastline.
yeah.
So any tips, I guess, to look out for on a cruise ship? I guess limiting your days at sea. It depends on what kind of traveler you are as
Yeah,
well,
that's
though.
very true.
Like if you get the balcony type of room and you have a day at sea and you're just going along the Alaskan coast,
Yeah.
that's something that we could do all day is just stare at
Yeah.
the mountains go by because it's the most relaxing part about
And
it.
I
right?
have heard something I'm interested in. Like I've heard of like smaller cruise lines where it's just like the people that we met in Denali. They went on like a smaller cruise line ship, but like it was just like a couple of couples, like maybe 10 people, and then so you really like are more intimate with like the land. You can port in different places, and like the giant cruise ships can go and like stay longer. It's not as much to like get 5,000 people back on board.
Right.
It's like you 10 back here, so you like have a longer time to work with. But that is something I'm interested in, is like the smaller cruise lines.
And that's a smaller
Seeing
ship
those. Yeah,
as well.
a smaller ship.
Yeah, more flexible. Yeah, because cruise ships are ginormous and they have very limited options for things. Yeah, especially when
Yeah.
there's the places where you had to get on a little boat and
Yeah.
cart over. Like that takes a lot of time, and you have to like sign up, get a ticket to go if you want to go on
Yeah.
the land. You have to sign up for that, and it was kind of a confusing process for us at first because we didn't really know
Yeah,
what the
we were
heck
doing.
that
yeah.
was. Yeah, but yeah, that there's a lot of quirks. Yeah, not sure if we'll ever do a cruise like that again.
Not
you
a
know.
big one.
Yeah.
I don't think.
So-
Unless it's just like one of those things where like our friends want to do it and we're like, sure.
Yeah, but why?
Because it is easy for like that type of
Yeah.
trip.
So why do you think you wouldn't do
Well, I did it. I know what it's like.
like that? Yeah.
And then I've done not that. And I know what it's like. And I liked the not that better.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you do find. I mean, we were one of the as far as averages go, we were kind of on the younger end of the.
Oh, yeah. Like in
Average.
Alaskan cruises, like your demographic for that is like older
Yeah.
people, older retired people for sure. But honestly, I liked that because I was a little bit worried because I've heard of like cruise ship stuff and it's like party
Oh, yes.
central, which is like not really my vibe. So I actually like really liked hanging out with like the older crowd. It was like very relaxed.
Even though the sun stays up for much longer, people go to sleep at
Yeah.
the same earlier times.
Yeah.
Nobody's
So
staying up.
I felt like we were like alone on the ship a lot.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I mean, that's why we saw like the whale and stuff by ourselves because it was probably like I don't know 11 p.m. or something, but the sun was still up and we were just standing out there because we don't know when to go to sleep
Yeah.
because the sun's still up.
Messes you up, yeah.
And then yeah, I didn't see the sun or I didn't see the sun down
Yeah.
until like the last day
Yeah.
because we just weren't.
Ever awake
Ever,
until
yeah.
2 a.m.
Yeah.
outside.
So that was weird. It's like you never saw nighttime
Yeah.
the whole time, but.
Yeah.
Overall, yeah, worth it as our first like introduction to Alaska, but
It depends on what type of travel you are. Like
Yes.
as far as like relaxing, low planning maintenance goes, cruises are excellent. If you're like us and like want to do stuff, then
Yes.
you might consider something else. But I would have. It's not like I would. I'm glad that we did it.
Mhm.
Like I have no regrets about doing that.
Yep. And 2 years later, just almost exactly 2 years later, right? This summer
Yeah.
of 2021, we return, but we'll save that for the next part.
Yeah.
When we visit Anchorage again, we go to Denali National Park. We walk on a glacier and drink glacier water, and we go to Kenai Fjords National Park.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about
We
that
have a lot
trip.
to say about that trip, but that's for another part. This was, how long were we talking? Maybe 30, 45 minutes, but it was a little shorter one, but this is our intro to our multi-part type of theme that we're going to have. So
The Alaska series.
The Alaska series. So that's it for this one. If you ever want to go on a cruise, it's highly recommended, but that's just us. So you might have a different experience on a cruise, but as far as Alaska goes, the views are there.
I feel like you can't have a bad, well, I'm sure you could have a bad experience in Alaska. I take that back. But if you're considering visiting Alaska, the answer is yes.
Righto. Well, thanks so much, guys, for listening. It was, we got a little more structured on this, but we will see you next time.